Upcoming episodes on the Flying Monkey podcast. Country music artist Grant Malloy Smith. 3-time Grammy Award winner Ricky Cage. Actor-musician, the one and only Chris Mulkey. Father's rights advocate Robert Garza. And new episodes of Parent Stories. Go to flyingmonkeypodcast.com and select your favorite social media site to join us. Subscribe to us on YouTube and... the Flying Monkey Podcast. All right, guys. Well, we're having a very special episode of the Flying Monkey Podcast. And today we're going to have a discussion about probably a whole lot of things here. And we have special guests Tanawah Downing, Jessica Saxton, and Matt Dotson, and me, Tommy, from the Flying Monkey Podcast. So how you guys doing today?
Doing good. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on. Great to have an opportunity to talk to you. I know you guys are super busy doing all kinds of stuff, and you're you're country trotting. You're back and forth all over the place. So I guess the most important, well, there's so many important points and things to talk about, but why don't we just touch base on what you guys are going to be doing this weekend? You're going to be having a rally called We Shall Be Free Rally.
If I could, let me just say what we just did as opposed to what we're about to do first. So as you know, I've been going around the country and I've been serving all the state attorney generals with notices that their agents, the prosecuting attorneys, are committing crimes when they deprive people of rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution under the color of a state statute, an inferior state statute. You can't rely upon an inferior state law that permits you to abridge your obligations that are constitutionally codified. So we've gone around the country now. We've served 47 state attorney generals, 47 state Supreme Courts. And today, for the first time, out of all the services I've done, we served directly on the Attorney General of the state of Vermont, Miss Charity R. Clark. So we did provide service on an actual Attorney General. When we pulled up this morning to her office, she just happened to be outside providing a little dog and pony show with some kids. And so we waited for her to finish up and then followed her on in and informed her of these crimes that her agents are committing, asking her to please direct her agents to act in lawful constitutional manner. And if she doesn't, then she'll be subject to criminal sanctions as a result of it. So today was a good day, great day.
That is a great thing. Wow, it's some pretty heavy duty stuff. And it's actually such a simple fix. They just have to do what they're supposed to. But yet we can find time and time again that they just ignore the law, they ignore the Constitution, and they never seem to do what's right.
That's true. That's true. And honestly, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do this in the least destructive manner. You see, the way that I like to say it is that I can't prevent them from exercising their power. Someone that's been empowered by the people of the United States is going to do whatever they're going to do, and I can't stop them. But what I can do is I can show them that should they choose to exercise their power without lawful authority, that's a crime. And you can be held criminally liable for such crimes. And so when you provide a notice to the highest law enforcement officer, letting them know that their law enforcement agents, their agents are committing crimes, when they fail to fulfill the obligations codified in the Constitution of the United States of America, well, they got a choice. They can either, one, choose to act lawfully, correct the acts of their agents, or two, you are knowingly and willingly engaging in criminal behavior and permitting your agents to commit acts that are treasonous in nature. So this is a very, very big deal that we're at right now as of this point with all these services that we've done.
Yes. And how long have you been working on this, that you've been on this cause?
So I went into litigation full time 9 years ago. I've actively been pursuing this final step of bringing it into the Supreme Court of the United States jurisdiction about the last 2.5 years. So, I keep going back and forth across this country, providing and sowing seeds of justice so we might be able to receive that harvest. But what's necessary is that we've got to notify all of the agents across the states, and there's a lot of agents. There's 40,000 judges across the country. There's twice as many prosecuting attorneys across the country. So To serve all of them is a very complicated process, although not that complicated, because remember, notice to agent is notice to principal, but notice to principal is notice to agent. So when the highest law enforcement officer of a state is the attorney general, and the highest judicial officer of a state is the Supreme Court justices, then if you notify them of the crimes that their agents are committing, you provided notice to all of their agents across the country. So we focused on providing service to the highest law enforcement and the highest judicial officer across these states that are acting unconstitutionally in direct violation of the obligations codified in the Constitution of the United States of America. And now we have finished that service. There isn't a single state judge that can oversee the disposition of this dispute now, because every single one of those judges are all engaged in a criminal behavior after being notified of these crimes and failure to take action to correct their unlawful acts. Now they are all opposing party. There isn't a single judicial or a single law enforcement attorney in the country now outside of that Supreme Court of the United States that can oversee the disposition of this dispute, because we have provided notice to all of their agents, every one of them, and they failed to take action to obey the will of the people and the laws that they're accountable to. And in doing so, I can now step into the role of a private attorney general, prosecuting on behalf of the United States under empowered under the laws of RICO.
Wow, that's some heavy duty stuff. It's a lot. And so there's probably a lot of people watching that have been following you guys and kind of know what's going on. But for the folks that are tuning in and just watching this and are just trying to figure out what are the things, or what, let's maybe talk about some of the things that these courts are doing that are unconstitutional, unlawful.
If we could split it up, I'll take the criminal side and Jessica here take the family side, but they're so interrelated that we needed to bring them together. So if you don't mind, I'll start with the criminal side.
Yeah.
So when it comes to a constitutional violation, there's a couple of ways that you can look at it. One would be an enumerated constitutional right, which are specifically written within the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. That's an enumerated right. No state can interfere with an enumerated right. That's upheld by the United States Supreme Court in a unanimous decision in 2019, that says that the privileges and immunities of United States citizens are at a minimum those enumerated within the Bill of Rights, given their legal effect against interference by the states because of their codification in the Constitution's text. So if it's written in the Constitution's text, that is at a minimum what every single person residing within the jurisdictional United States is entitled to from interference by the states. That's a restriction against the state's interference of such rights. So what we're doing first off is that Clause 1 of Amendment 5, that's certainly part of the Constitution. No one is arguing that fact. It was that Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, were adopted and ratified by the people on December 15th, 1791. In all intents and purposes, there is no one denying that the Bill of Rights is part of the Constitution. And as a result, Clause 1 of Amendment 5 says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Now that's clear. You got to have an indictment by a grand jury before arresting someone and holding them over for a capital or an infamous crime. A capital crime is any crime punishable by a death. That's very easy. An infamous crime is a little bit more difficult. You got to dig into the law a little bit to find that. An infamous crime is defined by Title 18, subsection 4083 as any crime punishable by more than 1 year imprisonment in a penitentiary. So if you can get more than 1 year, it is an infamous crime requiring the indictment by a grand jury per the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, to clarify, it's not the amount of time you get sentenced to, but the amount of time you can be sentenced to. That's the United States versus Coachman, United States Supreme Court. Because the Constitution says no person shall be held to answer. The moment you're held is the moment you arrest. That's what triggers the infamous nature of the crime. So if you only get sentenced to 3 months, but you could have gotten 2 years, that is an infamous crime requiring an indictment by a grand jury. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring this up because there are 13 states across the country right now today that do not conduct a grand jury at all, including the state of Washington, the state of Connecticut, the state of Pennsylvania, the state of Michigan, the state of North Dakota, South Dakota. These are states that are acting direct, willful defiance of the established enumerated procedures and processes codified in the Constitution of the United States of America for the adjudication of crime. As a result, there's more than 700,000 people currently imprisoned here in America today on direct facial constitutional violations. It means the states didn't follow the very basic procedures and processes codified in the Constitution when they performed that arrest. States, you do not have the authority to create your own laws, substitute them for the guarantees of the Constitution, and then go out and enforce them as though that is the law, because that is unconstitutional. And when you do, right, when an agent does go out and enforce an inferior state law in direct violation of their obligations codified in the Constitution of the United States, what you've done is a crime. So the first part of what we're dealing with is the criminal matter, right? There are 700,000 people here in America in prison on things that don't even exist. There is no judgment whatsoever that exists that's holding these brothers and sisters in these institutions that we call a sweatshop in China, but a prison here in America. There's a much better way to treat our people, and we're going to make sure that Washington, D.C. understands that we're no longer going to do business this way. That's the first step. Jessica?
And they're removing children the exact same way. So, piggybacking off of his enumerated, we have the incorporated side. So what he's done with the affidavits is he's incorporating us into his same procedural situation. These children are being taken with no due process. Similar to the prisons, they have 700,000 prisoners that are currently incarcerated. We have 12 million children that have been taken from families unlawfully. There's no due process. The parents are being charged by information. They're being accused before they have the right to go through the due process. We're being accused of being an unfit parent. So we're being presumed guilty before we actually have any reason to think that we are guilty for being unfit parents.
So when it comes to, again, a constitutional right, there's enumerated and there's unenumerated. Unenumerated means it's not written in the Constitution. The family side is an unenumerated right. The reason being is that nowhere in the Constitution of the United States of America does it say that you have the right to your family. Now we understand completely that God created the family. But my argument to our government and our forefathers is the first act of our government should have been the preservation of our family, not the last act. And here we are today with the state interfering with something that God created. You see, God made you a mother. God made you a father. Only God can take that away. That's not a creation of the state. And as a result, it is protected by the Constitution of the United States of America. And that was found to exist by the United States Supreme Court in 1984 in the case Roberts versus United States. In Roberts versus United States, actually back in 1984, they created two different associations, right? One is political association, the other is intimate association. Political associations that you have the right to have political attachments. I have the right to be a part of a political party without governmental interference. But the second half of what they determined that year was the rights of intimate association. You have the right to have an intimate familial relationship with your child without governmental interference. And your child has the right to have an intimate familial relationship with you without governmental interference. Now, the problem is that to fight for the family, we must have an enumerated constitutional right, because Timms versus Indiana, the case I just referred to in 2019, unanimous decision, 6 of the same Supreme Court justices that we're dealing with today, they already made this decision. And they said that the privileges and immunities of United States citizens are at a minimum those enumerated within the Bill of Rights, given their legal effect against interference by the states because they're codified in the Constitution's text. The grand jury clause is clearly enumerated within the Bill of Rights. Therefore, this decision has already been made. The Supreme Court is being obstinate on it because they don't want to admit this, because this is a big, big deal. 700,000 prisoners that are currently illegally and unconstitutionally imprisoned. That's a big enough deal that we can get in to have an argument. But I'm gonna tell you right now, my argument is not, do people get indictments by a grand jury? That would be too easy and too obvious. The argument that we have is can states be both accuser and judge in the same cause? The answer is absolutely not. But that's what happens with information. When a state charges you by information, it is the state and an agent of the state that is bringing an accusation. Therefore, the same body of men cannot be presumed to be neutral and biased, acts as a judge in the case. Therefore, that judge has an automatic, mandatory, non-waivable, self-executing duty to recuse himself under Title 28, subsection 455, and failure to do so has already been litigated. Hill versus United States, that judge is now acting without jurisdiction, and as a result, he's committing crime of treason and warring against the Constitution of the United States. So the same thing happens with the interference with the familial unit. If CPS gets involved, remember, CPS is an agent of the state because they're enforcing the laws of the state, right? And as a result, when a state agent, CPS, law enforcement, it doesn't matter. When an agent of the state brings an accusation against you, that same body of men cannot be judged against you. This is codified within Article 3 of the Constitution of the United States of America, where it says, in all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. Now, let me just say that one more time for you. In all cases in which a state shall be party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. Original jurisdiction means that that's the court to act first. It is the original court, not an appellate court, but the original court. Now, to understand the rationale behind Article 3, or to understand the original intent, the originalist constructionalist perspective of the Constitution of the United States, we would typically go to three people who wrote the Federalist Papers. One was John Jay, Alexander Hamilton, and James Madison. Those were the three men. So James Madison is considered the father of the Constitution. In fact, Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch is walking around the country saying that is the supreme authority on all things constitutional. He wrote the Bill of Rights. So if we want to know the original intent of the Constitution of the United States in Article 3, where it says in all cases in which a state shall be party, we would go to the Federalist Papers and Circular Number 10, New York Packet, November 23rd, 1787. The article was titled "The Union as a Safeguard Against Domestic Faction and Insurrection." In that article, James Madison said, "No man is allowed to be judge in his own cause, because his interest would no doubt bias his judgment and not improbably corrupt his integrity. With equal, nay, with greater reason, a body of men are unfit to be both judge and party at the same time." This is the earliest known reference to the modern day concept of conflict of interest. Mr. Madison was formulating the idea of conflict of interest when he said that a body of men are unfit to be both judge and party at the same time. That is the reason why James Madison wrote Article 3 the way that he did. So now we have one of the forefathers, one of the founders of drafts the Constitution, that tells us exactly why a state could not be both party and judge in the same cause. But maybe that's not enough. Maybe we need a little bit more. Let's go to Alexander Hamilton, who wrote the Federalist Number 80. In the Federalist Number 80, Alexander Hamilton provided two references to this issue. The first is he said that the federal judicial authority of the Union must extend to all cases between a state and the citizens thereof. So if there's a dispute between a state and the citizens of that state, the federal judicial authority of the Union, the Supreme Court of the United States, must extend to that particular dispute. The second reference that he made is he said state tribunals cannot be presumed to be impartial when they speak for themselves. No man ought certainly be a judge in his own case or in any case with which he has the least bit bias or interest. Again, state tribunals cannot be presumed to be impartial when they speak for themselves. We got a second author of the Federalist Papers now talking about the reason why Article 3 says that a state cannot be both judge and party in the same cause. Now, the third drafter of the Federalist Papers, Mr. John Jay, he didn't write about it because he was actually sick at the time of writing the Federalist Papers, so he only wrote 3 of those. But he didn't write within the Federalist Papers any reference to this, but he became the first Supreme Court Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, and he sure in the hell did write about it in Martin v. Hunter's Lessee, where he said that the Constitution is presumed that state prejudices, state biases, and state ignorances might from time to time obstruct the administration of justice by state judges. Therefore, it is the case and not the court that grants jurisdiction to the Supreme Court. Again, it is the case and not the court. Anybody that says you got to go to a state court to get jurisdiction to be able to go to the Supreme Court doesn't understand the law, doesn't understand the history of the law, and as a result, they are acting without lawful jurisdiction, and that is warring against the Constitution, committing crime of treason. Hill versus the United States. We got this, brother. We got this.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a lot of information. And just from my layman, as I'm learning, going through this and finding out more, just like probably like most of our viewers, I had two thoughts or two questions that popped into my head. You were talking about the constitutionality of things and our natural rights by God and all that. What about the care, custody, and control in the 14th Amendment? Does that apply to us also having the
Care,
right to our
custody, and
children?
control?
Yeah, isn't that?
But no, so the 14th Amendment doesn't say anything about care, custody, and control. So there are some provisions within the 14th Amendment that we want to leverage, but there's only 5 provisions within the 14th Amendment, and it doesn't say anything about care control. So the 2 that we're attaching to on the 14th Amendment for this particular litigation would be the Equal Protection Clause, where it says no state shall create or enforce any law that does not provide equal protection of the law, right? That's the first. And then the second is no state shall create any law that shall abridge the privileges and immunities of United States citizens. So just to understand why we attach to those 2 and not the Due Process Clause. Due Process Clause is the one that the court has traditionally used to determine incorporation, but it was a fallacy. It was a mistake because no one understood what the due process was, which was why I attached to different provisions for this particular litigation. But again, no state shall create or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of United States citizens. If the Supreme Court came out in 2019 in a unanimous decision in Timbs versus Indiana, that's TIMBS versus Indiana, and they said that the privileges and immunities of United States citizens are at a minimum those enumerated within the Bill of Rights, given their legal effect against interference by the states because of their codification in the Constitution's text. What that means is that if it's enumerated, no state can create a law or enforce a law which would abridge it. Now, abridgment means to reduce, diminish, or take away. So if you interfere with the right of an indictment by a grand jury, that is certainly enforcing a law in violation of the Privileges and Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment. Now, there's another thing here, because I know a lot of people, they complain about the U.S. citizenship and all that. But you guys, you got to understand my path is set. I'm not asking anyone for permission. I'm not asking anyone for guidance. I understand the sovereignty route. I respect the sovereignty route. But I do want to say that for me, my path is different because I believe in America. I believe in American laws. I believe in what it says and its power. I believe in us. And I want to say that we live in a communal society, which the only way that we can live peacefully and in harmony within this communal society is if we give up certain rights in order to accept the greater good of the whole. So we do have to have laws. We can't claim sovereignty and say, I'm immune from the laws don't apply with me, because that's not living in a good communal society. I accept the citizenship. I accept the fact that my fellow man might want me to drive 60 miles an hour. I'm going to be obedient to that, but I'm not going to be subjected to that. That's the big difference between the two. We can obey laws because we're willfully willing to do that because we love and care for our fellow man, but that's different from saying that we're going to enter into contracts, subject ourselves to it. So the United States citizen path, I'm not going to argue about, that versus sovereignty. I'm going to push forward because these people that are in prison are citizens. And if we want to help raise them out of there, I must be subject to the same laws that they are, because that's the only way that I can break them out of that institution. I must claim sovereign citizenship in order to help these people, and we can leverage the 14th Amendment Privileges and Immunities Clause to do so. Now, the second thing is the Equal Protection Clause, right? That says that no state shall create any law that does not provide equal protection of the law. Now, this applies to family court in many instances, because when you go into a family court, there's two people, right? Husband and a wife, and they're going through a dispute, right? And they're trying to determine who's going to get custody of that child. Well, the role of the judge is not to determine who the law applies to and who it doesn't, because when that judge says, you know what, sir, I'm going to give you custody of your children full time, but wife, woman over here, I'm not going to give you, and I'm going to take away your right. Now you're applying the law unequally amongst like members of society, and that is unconstitutional. That is a direct violation of the privilege or the Equal Protection Clause. You cannot determine who the law applies to and who doesn't. You judges are there to administer the laws equally, and if you don't administer those laws equally, then you are committing a crime because you are violating the 14th Amendment, where it says that no state shall create any law that does not provide equal protection of the law. Now, the second place that this applies is with the indictment issue, because most states, there's 13 states that do not conduct a grand jury at all, but the rest of the states permit their prosecuting attorney to charge by information or indictment by their discretion. Information is not an indictment. That is still unconstitutional. Such as the state of Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma, Article 2, Section 18 says that the prosecuting attorney can charge by information or indictment by their discretion. Now, the problem there is that you cannot create a law that directs someone that they can disobey the law. Discretion can never be used with regard to one's constitutional obligations. Discretion or obligations must be performed, because otherwise the state is creating a law that is directing them to break the law. And that would be unconstitutional. That's known as an emolument violation. You can never create a law that directs someone to break the law or abuse their discretionary authority with which they're invested in law to disregard a constitutional obligation. So when that prosecuting attorney is empowered to be able to decide this person is going to get indicted by a grand jury, but this person is not, that law is now unconstitutional, violation of the Equal Protection Clause, because that prosecuting attorney has no authority to be able to determine who is protected by the grand jury clause and who is not. Therefore, all 50 states are wrapped up into this issue under the Equal Protection Clause and the Privileges and Immunities Clause.
Wow. And now the other question I had, and so see, I'm even learning much more, and I appreciate all your knowledge. You're just It's amazing. You had mentioned the Article 3. So I was told that family courts are not Article 3 courts, that they're corporations. So how does that fit in, or what can people, or how do we grasp that concept?
Great question. Great question. The answer is that there's only one Article 3 court in the whole country, because Article 3 of the Constitution of the United States of America only created one court. That is the only Article 3 court. The Supreme Court of the United States of America is the only Article 3 court. It's the only one created by Article 3. So you can't say that state Supreme Courts are Article 3 courts, because Article 3 did not create the state Supreme Courts. The only Article 3 court in the country is the Supreme Court of the United States of America. But that being said, the state courts have no authority to exist, right, if they are not obedient to the Constitution of the United States. The reason being is because the states, they gave up their sovereignty to join the Union when they subjected themselves to the supremacy of the Constitution of the United States of America. The definition of a sovereign state is a state that is complete in itself, not subject to a higher government's laws, right? So if a state is sovereign, then that means that it's not subject to the Constitution of the United States. Not one of these states are sovereign because they all joined the Union and subjected themselves to the supremacy of the Constitution of the United States. Now we know that we're in the argument of this whole sovereignty issue. We're going to destroy sovereignty. You don't got to worry about that, any one of you. We got sovereignty under control, easy day. But that being said, if the states claim that they are sovereign, here's the problem. A union is defined, and remember, we're a republic, right? A union. A union is defined as two or more non-sovereign states with a centralized governing structure, okay? Non-sovereign states. Now, a non-sovereign state is defined as a state not complete in itself, subject to a higher government's laws. So if these states are subject to the Constitution of the United States, they cannot be sovereign, and therefore they must do and obey the obligations of the central government. All the laws of the United States, the central government, or the Constitution of the United States, they're all subject to them because that's what they did when they entered into the Union. Now, if they claim that they're sovereign, if we go into this and the states say, oh, that the Constitution doesn't apply to my courts, then the problem there is that we're living in a confederacy, not a union, because the confederacy is defined as two or more sovereign states with a loose, decentralized governing structure. So if the states say that they're sovereign and say that they can create their own courts in violation of the Constitution of the United States of America, then they're claiming sovereignty. And if they do that, the problem there is Article 1, Section 10 says no state shall form a confederacy. So we're going to have another thing to discuss if that's the route that they want to take. That's not a route that they want to take, because that would also be seditious in nature, because you cannot establish a confederacy here in America, because we in our own history are fully aware that confederacies promote enslavement of people, and look at how we have slavery embedded in every single jurisdiction across the United States of America. We have all kinds of problems that we're looking at with this issue. But going back to your question, Article 3 courts, let me just say, we, the people of the United States of America, in our sovereignty, we established the Constitution of the United States of America. We created the Constitution of the United States of America. Jurisdiction is a creation of statute. It's not a granting by an agent. It is a creation of statute. The Constitution is a statute. So when the people of the United States created the Constitution, that created jurisdiction, which is the authority for the court to speak the law, or the court to arbitrate a conflict. That's what jurisdiction is. So the Constitution creates jurisdiction. Jurisdiction then creates the court. The court then creates the agent. Therefore, the judge is the lowest on the totem pole. We, the people, are the highest, because we, in our sovereignty, created that which created that agent. Therefore, for an agent to say that they're above us is like a peasant saying that they're above the king, which is an argument too clear to be contested, in wise words of Chief Justice John Marshall. So I don't think that these judges have any sort of authority to be able to say that they're above the people, because we, the people, are the sovereign kings of this nation, not you, creation of a peasant.
Amazing. Yeah. But yet every day they're doing this left and right, over and over, and it's just, I mean, it's out of control.
Just because they do it doesn't make it right.
Correct.
And make it right now, because because that's what we're called to do, right? And so what I'm doing is, as I've said to a lot of people, this seems like a big deal. It seems like a huge, massive deal. But unfortunately, when God gets involved in things, things get a little bit smaller. They're really not that big. I'm not worried about this because I've been shown consistently over the last 9 years that I have something behind me that's providing an unbelievable amount of protection. When I drive around the country with 500,000, with evidence of 500,000 capital crimes that judges and prosecutors are committing all across this country, plastered with "We shall be free" across the side of the van, walking in and serving state attorney generals in person, I ain't afraid of you assholes, and I'm coming for you. Right? So you can choose to do the right thing, do the honorable thing, do the lawful thing, or you can choose to be subject to the laws of the people, which is a punishment that I don't think you want to encounter.
Yeah, and it's no, and God bless you for doing this. I mean, it's a huge task. It really is, and it's about, but it's saving society as a whole. I mean, and that's what all their actions are doing too. Like Jessica earlier had mentioned, I'm sorry if I misquote you. I think you were saying 4 million children are suffering, but I was looking at some stats that in this country it was like 22 million families are suffering just alone. That's just parental alienation, right? So if you just figure 1.5 kids per family, you're already looking at 40 to 50 million kids that are being kept away from a parent and being abused and having their entire attachment system destroyed, which means you can't function as a human being. And then you become a criminal, a drug addict, you're unemployed, you can't function, you can't have healthy relationships. And that's out of control. And then you've got the CPS factor, the foster home and the adoption, and they're taking kids. I mean, so it's millions and millions of children that are being abused from this system, and parents and citizens as a whole. And it's happening to moms and dads too. So, I don't know, Jess, if you want to chime in
It's
on some of
everywhere.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in this fight for a few years now, and I didn't realize that the same thing that was happening to me was happening to, thousands and thousands of other parents. And that was one
Yeah.
of the reasons back in November of last year, my sister said, "Hey, you got to get on TikTok. There's other moms just like you, your exact same story. You got to get on TikTok and connect with them." And I did. And within 2 months, I fired my attorney and I said, "This is what I'm going to do." One of those decisions was based off of basically a baby test where I created a Google form and I put it on Facebook and I was asking the mothers, and this was based off of Tanawah and the things that he was educating us about. And it was based off of the Constitution. How many constitutional violations have you experienced with these judges, the guardian ad litems, the CPS, the attorneys? How many constitutional violations have you experienced? And within 2 weeks, we had over 1,000 responses. So I had to cut the form off. I mean, I had all of my information on this form. I had people messaging me, asking me for help, and I didn't know what to do with it. And that was in January of this year. The following month is when, again, based off of Tanawah's education and teaching, that's when I filed my affidavits in the court. And I told my group, I said, "Look, I know this is a risk, but it's a risk that I'm willing to take because I know of 25 other families in Blount County, Tennessee right now who are going through the exact same problems on the constitutional side. They're being removed from their children, and our stories aligned way too much. And so that's what I did. And then immediately, direct retaliation. We went 19 months. And this isn't just my story. When I hear other people's stories, it's just, this is their standard operating procedure. This is what they do across the country in these lower district courts. So mine is no different. I'm not telling you this because I think it's special. It's not. But
Yeah.
19 months we went without a hearing because we didn't have time before the judge, right? Well, since I started filing these constitutional violations and affidavits of criminality against these judges, the guardian ad litem, the attorneys, all of these players that are acting on behalf of this state, now all of a sudden we've had multiple hearings, 6 or 7 hearings in the last 3 months. And they've effectively, kidnapped our children across state lines. So this is, unfortunately, this is the standard. And since,
It is.
God connected me with Tanawah, we were able to travel around the country. And now I hear these stories personally. I mean, we're having mothers that go to a hospital to have a baby and they don't leave that hospital with their child. And it's it's not because of any legitimate reason, you know? I mean, we're having babies that are misdiagnosed as having, as needing to have some type of treatment that the mother doesn't want to have. And now this baby is in CPS custody 5 months later, and the baby didn't even have a diagnosis. You
Yeah.
know, it's so common that it's disgusting. But once I heard these stories, this is why I decided, I was like, I can't just, even if I were to get my children back through whatever means, I still could not sit back and not, I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing that all of these mothers, all of these families,
Yeah.
and you know, these newborn babies that are just being taken. It's disgusting. And it's everywhere. And that's one of the things that it's so difficult for us as mothers. I talk with, you know, we have a group that we meet every weekday from 6 p.m. Central until, I mean, sometimes I wake up and I get on this Zoom and we have moms still working at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with each other, helping each other, supporting each other. But one of the things that I've had such a hard time, we as mothers and fathers have had such a hard time, is the people that have never been through this, they don't understand it. So when you try to tell them what's actually happening in their community and that their children could be taken away just as fast as the signature, you know, you signing a check, your children could be taken away that fast, they don't get it. No way.
No, they don't.
Get it. And I understand that side of it as well, because 2 years ago, I was the same way. I was like, if a mom had CPS taken, if a mom had her children taken by CPS, then obviously CPS did their job. I was still on the side of that these people were actually doing what they were supposed to set up to do. A lot of it is indoctrination. When you think about their marketing,
Exactly.
child protective services, you would think that they're protecting children, but they're not. They are endangering children. They're taking children for profit. And these are things that we all know. The issue is that we have to go, like what Tanawah is doing, to the highest level and have these agents direct the lower agents to do the right thing.
Yeah, when you, so I've had a very difficult time bridging between the end product, the prisoner, and the starting product, the child, right? And I've tried over the last 40 days, this last tour, to try to change that understanding, you know, because a lot of people look and they say, oh, well, he's trying to fight for prisoners, right? What does that have to do with CPS, or, you know, or those prisoners, they deserve whatever they got. They had to have done something, right? And I get that a lot. I hear that a lot. But what we're failing to understand is that hurting people hurt people, right? You know, I was down in North Carolina meeting with her father, you know, not that long ago. And we sat down, we had a conversation. You know, he spent a little bit of time in prison, and he said that while he was there, over 90% of the people that he talked to, and he said he was there preaching, that was, and that God sent him there for sure, for that reason. But 90% of the people he talked to didn't have a father, or didn't have a father within their life. You see, the problem is that when you remove the father from the household, there's a major breakdown that exists. The family unit is extremely dynamic, and we got to understand what God created and the importance of it, because if we don't, then we won't understand what's actually happening. But the father, what he does is he gives his image to his son, right? I teach my son how to be a man. My son learns how to be a man because he watches me. So absent me, this is very well known in the DSM, that absent a father, that male child grows up without a sense of self. Now he has a high likelihood of committing suicide. He has adjustment issues, living within the parameters of society. And as a result, now he's got an 80% likelihood of going to prison over his lifetime, because he doesn't know how to be a man living within the parameters of society, because his image of man was taken away. This is well known. This isn't anything new for anybody. Now, for a daughter, right, when you remove the father from the household, that daughter, she learns how to love from her father. Her father teaches her how valuable she is, how precious she is. She learns how to love from him. That's why a daughter will marry someone like her father, because she learns love from him. Absent him, now you have a woman who grows up that can't have long-lasting relationships because she didn't receive the love that she needed, that God created for her to become the person that she was intended to be. Now, the flip can be said for the wife, for the mother, right? She's equally as important in the familial dynamic, because she gives her image to her daughter. Her daughter learns how to be a woman from her. Absent the mother, that daughter grows up without a sense of self. She doesn't know how to be a woman. Therefore, she has adjustment issues. She's got a greater likelihood of suicide, and she's got an 80% likelihood of going to prison over her lifetime. So the problem is that what we're doing right now, 12 million children currently removed from their families, not receiving the love that they need to be able to become the person that they were created to be. These are going to be feeding into the system. And now we have a self-sustaining, reoccurring product that's fueling this system. Because right now, today, we have 2.9 million prisoners imprisoned across the country, 16 times more prisoners than the next closest industrialized nation. America has 5% of the world's human population, but 26% of the world's prison population. We got a prison problem here.
Wow.
And why is that? Because we have 12 million children right now that are growing up without the love that they need, who 80% of them are going to be feeding into the system within this next generation. We are on an unsustainable, very, very dangerous track right now. Very dangerous. And as a result, what we need to do is we've got to look at these children and we've got to say that we're going to help that child grow up and become the person they. TikTok loves to remove us, guys. The account's now restricted there. Apparently, something I was just saying there is upsetting to TikTok.
No, that's not the count.
Yeah, so both of our accounts are now restricted because of these things I'm saying. I'm so sorry if I'm offensive to people in the things I'm saying, but you're more than welcome to go out and look at the statistics, because not one thing that I'm saying is incorrect or inaccurate. It is all absolutely 100% accurate. And so, as I was saying before, my argument right now is we have got to stop looking at what people do. Because when we look at what people do, all we see is this monster that needs to pay for things they've done. And that creates this vengeance-based system where we punish the monster for the things that they did. But what we got to do is we've got to look at that person long before that crime, as a child, as a husband, as a mother, for the things that happened to them that changed the trajectory of their life. And now it's not their fault. And now we want to help them. Now we want to heal them. So
that's right. Cause and effect, right?
Help them and not hurt them. And so we got to look at the beginning and not the end.
Yeah, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and the cause. What caused the
apparently we're offending people here in here too. So we're gonna have to get off.
Holy moly! All right. Well, then, real quickly before we do that, we won't make any more. We're just talking facts and telling the truth here. So I don't know how anyone can have an issue with any of this.
Well, we are in liberal Vermont. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but the one thing that I think is really important, because people are still watching and they'll see this, this weekend coming up on June 7th and 8th at the National Mall in Washington, D.C., there's going to be a rally. We Shall Be Free rally. And you want to tell us just about that real quick? And then.
Yeah. So this is it. We've gone around the country and we picked up 500,000 criminal affidavits on behalf of the people of the United States that have had these crimes committed against them. Absence of indictment by a grand jury, by the states, interference with the familial unit. And we're now preparing to deliver this to whoever would like to receive it. So this weekend, we go into the final days of this. So Friday, New York City at the Freedom Tower, we're going to be having a rally there at 10 a.m. I believe a little bit earlier. I think 9:59 or 9:58 is going to be the prayer, because that was the moment that the towers fell. And there's a lot of that story that still needs to be told. And unfortunately, the deprivation of rights that we're experiencing, the erosion of our fundamental rights, a lot of it really started or really proliferated as a result of September 11th and the Patriot Act. And so we want to bring and tie those stories together. So that's why we're having this final rally in New York City on June 6th at 10 a.m. Be there for a prayer a couple minutes before when those towers first fell. And so let's talk about the history of charging by information. Let's talk about the deprivation of rights, and let's have a good solid rally. We really need that to be large. So anybody that's in New York area or willing to come out, please come on out. We need the crowd there to get the news, to actually participate. But if we can get the news to participate in New York City, that news will carry us into Washington, D.C. for the following day, Saturday, and that will carry us into Monday when we deliver this to whoever wants to receive it. Because either one, the FBI is going to step up and they're going to act in a lawful constitutional manner consistent with their obligations and enforce the laws of the United States, including those that are engaged in deprivation of rights under color of law. Or two, I'm going to empower myself and we will deliver this directly to the United States Supreme Court, and I will act under the laws of RICO, empowered as a private attorney general to do it on behalf of people of the United States. So those are the choices that you have, public officials. But Saturday, then we have another rally at the National Mall in Washington D.C., right in front of the Capitol. It's going to be at the Grant Memorial. We've got a great lineup there as well. Potentially a couple of United States congressmen that have considered coming out. We're going to pray that they actually show up and speak. But we've got a hell of a lineup otherwise. But we also have a couple of big events that are happening in Washington D.C. this weekend, which could bring quite a few more people to this audience. So, all I got to say is that you guys can either, one, public officials, anybody else that might be watching this, you guys can either, one, take a gamble and pray that this information doesn't go forward, or two, you can concede, come forward and share the stage with us, and we can talk about working together to fix these. But if I have to bring this to the attention of the people of the United States while you're still obstinate of it after having served every one of you, then I think that it's probably going to go very, very bad for you. So thank you so much. God bless.
All right. Thanks so much. And then I think Matt wanted to jump in real quick. If
Well, yeah, I just wanted to say this is a very large pie, and I represent and work my day in and day out with Hope and Darkness, providing behavioral solutions to parents who are faced with the trauma of alienation, as it were, in the family courts. And I could go on for days and days about the integration of the American Psychological Association into these court cases without having justification for those types of testimonies and the net effect on families. What we happen to believe is the bottom line is this is behavioral driven, and this is what we're seeing. What Tanawah is describing is the wholesale change of perception of all American citizens through conditioning. So this has been going on for quite a while, and we wholeheartedly support Tanawah's efforts and Jessica's efforts as well, in moving the needle on the social implications of what we see happening through our family courts, through CPS, CYS agencies, the trafficking that's involved, et cetera. What we're doing is, we're a relatively small organization, and Hope and Darkness never wanted to come at this from a top-down approach. I think Tanawah is dead on. He's got this whole system pegged. It's going to require a massive movement of a very lumbering ship to get this turned around. And I think he's the man for the job, and we support it. Our efforts, on the other hand, have always been an approach from the bottom up. We believe that by teaching parents about behaviorism and the effects through the court system, utilizing behavioral discussions, that in fact will create over time a groundswell. Concurrently, we established recently, there's a couple of things that we're working on. We established a PAC, if you will, called the Ministry of Family Integrity, and we're pursuing a project. We're calling it Project Masquerade. The efforts of Project Masquerade are essentially to bring these courts into the realm of consumer protection and commerce. So that organization, the Ministry of Family Integrity, will be pursuing I wouldn't say changes to existing law, because the laws are already there under the Commerce Clause. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 gives them the authority to enact certain provisions upon other states who are part of the union. As Tanawah had very succinctly described, we are a union of states, and these states are acting independently. We see this over and over again in every case we've dealt with over the last year and a half, about 2,600 parents, and the stories are eerily the same. So we're going to be putting forth effort to change the nature of engagement in family courts, whereby the courts themselves in all states through federal law will be required to disclose. consumer protection language onto the form. And bottom line is, if you as a litigant, we see this all the time. There's one parent who wants to pursue this in court, and then there's another parent who doesn't. The parent who doesn't is dragged along, and they're typically the victim of the system, and ultimately the child is the victim. So we believe that by changing the language and creating an opt-in scenario, utilizing the Commerce Clause, that we can avoid a lot of this and push these cases by osmosis into the federal system, where presumably law does exist. So that's kind of what our efforts are right now. We will be working with anyone and everyone within this sphere who has an interest in the preservation of families in this country, because, as was aptly described earlier, this is a critical issue for our nation. Yeah. If we don't get a handle on this, we are doomed.
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah, a family can survive without a nation, but the nation cannot survive without the family. And the destruction of the familial unit that we're doing right now in our ignorance, so that we can profit off of the involuntary servitude of the weakest, most vulnerable in our society, in this institution that we call, again, a prison here in America, but a sweatshop in China, is destroying our country. These 12 million children, they need to get back home with their families, and they need to get the love that they need to be able to become the person that they were created to be, instead of the monster that the system is going to make them become. And we're not going to put up with that shit anymore. So I'm not going to say where we're going to be tomorrow. Today we're going to New Hampshire. So if you're around Manchester, Concord area, come on out and visit with us. Tell me I'm right. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you love me. I don't care. But come out and show your support. We would love to see you if you're in the Manchester, New Hampshire area. Tomorrow we're going to be in the Boston area in the afternoon doing doing an event. So if you're in Boston, look for us, look for the location. I'm not going to be giving out locations in advance anymore. We've had a couple of scares here the last few days, and we're not going to give advance notice of where we're at anymore. It's too critical of a juncture at this point in time. But then again, the following day, Thursday, we're going to be in Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, and Hartford, Connecticut. You guys are in that area, come on out, see us. And then New York City on Friday. And then we're on our way down to Washington, D.C. to get this wrapped up, you guys. I wouldn't be out here doing this if I didn't believe in it, if I didn't have faith in it. No one would give up their life and everything to do the things I'm doing, and to do it for free. I do this because I love my country. I do this because I love all of you. And I do this because it's the right thing to do. And I made a promise to people in the United States 28 years ago that I would support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I'm a man of my word. We're going to fulfill that obligation. And we're going to put the Constitution back in its foundation. And anybody that's standing against that one objective, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. And real quick, Tanawah, just people don't always know everything about you. We don't need to get into everything, but thank you for your service to this country that you did. And thanks for the service and the service you're doing now.
It's been an honor to serve the people of the United States. I mean, a definition of a patriot is one who loves and defends his country. And I'm really proud to say that I'm as much a patriot as this country has ever produced. But the only reason why I'm able to do that is because of the amazing, talented, and sacrificial men who came before me, and women that came before me, to show me what it means to be a patriot. I'm honored to be able to serve the next in line for those that came before me. And I know that all of you are looking to get up there as well. But I do want to say that patriotism is a dialogue between your fellow man and the world, larger world as a whole, about not only what is good about your country, but how it can be better. Patriotism is a dialogue. It is not a call to arms, because if you love something, destruction would never be an optional outcome to that. That's it's loved. I do not want to see any more destruction. I don't care if it's those that are acting to destroy us. If they're not going to return from their ignorance, we know what their fate is going to be. But at the end of the day, I want everyone to come together as a nation, and let's fix this problem, because that's the least destructive and most patriotic way to finish this objective. So thank you so much.
Amen. Amen. You got it. So folks, look up the We Shall Be Free rally. Any other sites that they can locate you guys to find more information at that you want to tell us about, or let them know?
So I have TikTok, right? It's at Tanawah Downing. That's Tanawah Downing, Downing. I have Instagram at Tanawah Downing. I have Facebook. That is Tanawah.Downing.5. And we also have YouTube, Tanawah Downing. We have the We Shall Be Free tour on Rumble channel. Jessica has at Jessica Saxton on Facebook, and also at
Justice Without Limits
Justice Without Limits.
on TikTok.
And then we also have a website, www.tanawah.com. That's TANAWAH.com. You guys can download a lot of information there, including the affidavits. If you want to become a co-petitioner in this, you're welcome to download those affidavits. You're not going to be able to mail them at this point in time and have them received. So if anybody wants to send us an affidavit who hasn't yet, you're more than welcome to download the affidavit and then sign it in blue. Follow all the same instructions, but then you'll email it to me. But if you're going to email it, then you must still put it in the mail, right? You'll still put it in the North Carolina post office, put it in the mail to there, but we will permit you to send any leftover affidavits, any remaining affidavits over these next couple of days to my email. That's TanawahDowning@gmail.com. Hopefully we can put it in the comments box, but TanawahDowning@gmail.com. And one last thing, I don't get paid to do this. I do this because it's the right thing to do. I do this because God has empowered me to do it. If you guys are inspired by the words I'm saying, you guys want to help make sure that we're successful over these next few days, we do operate only on donation only. And no one is required to donate to us. I'm going to help everybody, whether you are able to pay or not. The reason being is that these prisoners and these children, the only reason why their rights are being taken is because they're poor and can't afford an attorney. So these people, they don't have the money to be able to get the support they need. So if you have money and you want to support this, consider your donation going for someone who can't support it, right? But we have Cash App, Chime, Venmo, PayPal, and they are all exact the same. It's We Shall Be Free. That's WESHALLBEFREE. This is 100% donation funded, and you guys are the reason why I'm able to do the things I'm doing. Thank you all so much. God bless. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And for everyone watching, remember, it's time to unite. It's time to work together. It's not just moms. It's not just dads. It's all of us. It's parents. It's children. It's Americans. And if we want to have a better world, a better country, a better society, we need to take care of the kids and give them the proper upbringing and the proper guidance and the proper love and support and care to function as better people in the world. And that's where it starts. So again, thank you all for coming on today. It's awesome what you're doing, and hopefully we'll do a follow up down the road here, and we'll catch up and see the progress where we're at. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
And
sounds good.
Tommy,
Appreciate you having us on here.
And again,
Oh, thank
New
you.
York City is so important. If you're in the area, guys, come out to New York. We need the crowd there. We need it. If we're successful in New York, I can fail every single one of these right up until the one we're victorious at. Come out to New York, help us be successful, and let's ride this media campaign into Washington D.C. where they won't be able to shut this down again.
All
and
right.
then Tommy, if any parents are embroiled in this right now and they need some time, we offer free consultations with parents. You can tell your story. We can learn a little bit more about it, and we can teach you a bit about learning theory and its application to this problem at hopeanddarkness.info. And
Okay.
we'll put something up there on that site for Tanawah as well. We'll
yeah.
discuss with Jessica whether we can post the downloadable
Get a link
forms
for them.
that he discussed. Yeah, and then
Yeah, that'd be
also if you
awesome.
need more information on the Consumer Protection and Due Process Disclosure Act, there's a page on there for that as well that describes what the program is.
Okay, perfect. All right, guys.
Yeah,
Well, we'll wrap it up.
One
Oh,
more thing,
go, Jess.
Tommy. We're going to have a Zoom that will have 1,000 attendees spots where we can host 1,000 attendees for the rally in DC. So I'm so thankful for the parents that have been able to make it and have confirmed with me. I mean, we have people coming from all over the country, and I was getting messages even, just a few days ago that said, hey, we rented 2 cars and we have 16 people coming from Salt Lake City, just for this rally in DC. Nonetheless, some people can't make it for whatever reason. So we are going to have a place for people to be able to come and rally with us virtually. We have people bringing in their extra phones, extra devices so that we can live stream it. And I have Amy out of Springfield. She's going to be moderating the Zoom. So, if I can give you that Zoom information,
Please.
and people can find
Yeah.
it there with you too. So definitely.
Yeah.
You can still be in attendance at the rally in DC, even if you're not there physically. So anyway,
Yes.
whatever. God's gonna work it out. He works it out every time.
He'll provide.
DAG,
He'll
so,
provide. It'll work
Yep.
out.
Yep.
All
So-
right. All right. You guys take care. Be safe. And again, thank you for all you're doing. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you both as well. Matthew, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And
All right.
keep up the fight. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate that so much. You guys,
you. All right.
email.
Talk with you later.
All right. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching the Flying Monkey podcast. Like, follow, and subscribe to our social media sites on Facebook, X, YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, and Truth Social. You can also go straight to our webpage at www.flyingmonkeypodcast.com.
Have you been victimized by family court? Are you suffering parental alienation? It's child abuse and it's domestic violence by proxy. Are you stuck drowning in legal and mental health bills? Get off the treadmill, escape the trap. With over 10 years of research, thousands of parent interviews and case studies worldwide, we have developed a system that works to help you get your kids back. Join the movement now. HopeInDarkness.info, StopTheAbuse.info, AlienationAcademy.com, and TheFlyingMonkeyPodcast.com. It's time for change, and it's time to stop the abuse. Go to tinyurl.com/stop-parental-alienation.